Welcome to The Real and the Woo. I'm your host, Laurie Stern. When I was inspired to create my show, I had several goals: to connect people, connect people more deeply to themselves, and to bring a little more joy into the world by building room for it in each day. I was also eager to tell the stories of people who have gone from tragedy to triumph, sorrow to success, victimhood to victory, hopeless to hopeful, and more. Why Not Me is an ongoing series that helps illustrate how our worst moments may become some of our life's biggest gifts. Join my very brave guests and me as they tell their unique and very personal stories while helping connect us all in understanding the adage, life happens for us, not to us. Why not me? Well, why not you? In addition, like several of my other bonus episodes you'll be hearing, I won't have my usual intro or outro music. And in these segments for Why Not Me, I will not be breaking for joy on the fives. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy the show. I'm bringing Alex back for another segment on The Real and the Woo, which I'm introducing, called Why Not Me, which is all about when life gives us our worst moments, we can become our best selves. We can look at those moments, maybe not in the moment they're happening, but as some of our biggest gifts, which I know is a hard trigger word to say, that tragedy brings a gift. That's not to minimize the pain or the trauma, but I believe it is a gift in a way of learning. So that's what I'd like to talk about now. I'd like you, in your own words, to tell my listeners any part of the story that allowed you to come out on the other side with the wherewithal that this was an opportunity to really learn more about yourself and life as you did, because you had to.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing question because it reframes the comment of, is this happening to me or for me?
Right.
And it's the choice of whether we stay in a victim mentality or, move forward with, maybe we're a little bit bruised, but, with grit and grace and gratitude, which is how I sign every book. It's with grit, grace, and gratitude, into the deep we go. So clearly, yeah, I did build something from the experience, but I think bigger than that, this really pushed me into my purpose. And I think we're all here for a reason. And it's kind of our job to figure out what it is we're supposed to be doing with our time on earth, which is quite short in hindsight. And so what this did for me was wake me up, and it kind of dropped me into this portal of figuring out what I'm supposed to be doing here. And it led me to this different role of leadership. I think I've got I got the leadership code. That's clear. But am I just leading, like kind of arbitrarily leaving, or am I really showing up in servant leadership? And the goal for me is to show up in servant leadership, meaning I think my story was meant to be shared, as I think so many stories are meant to be shared, but shared in a way that people can take something and apply it to strengthen, whatever it is that they're doing. And I'm very vague with the languaging because nobody is going to have my apples to apples journey. No one's going to have your apples to apples journey. No one's going to have Sally's or Joe's or whatever. And when we stop, comparison is the thief of joy. And when we stop comparing these, like, well, this happened to you and this happened to me, so therefore we don't understand. When we get away from that, because that's not helpful, and we look at the emotions that rest beneath the experiences, that's where the connection starts to happen. Mm-hmm. So when I say show up as a servant leader, I'm using my voice and sharing my story in a way that people can see themselves in me. And maybe they feel that glimmer of hope. They can get a little courage, that they can rest a little easier in knowing everything about our life on earth is impermanent. When you're in the good, it's really tough to kind of swallow that lesson, that philosophy of impermanence. When you're in the shit, it's real easy. I won't be here forever. Here we go. But it's sharing in a way that people can really feel empowered and lit up. The end of my book is very phoenix rising from the ashes. But it didn't end the way that I wanted it to. It just it had to end. And I needed to leave people with like some sort of feeling that they could go into their own lives and still rise, no matter what happened, no matter how bad it was or how much shame you carry from it. Keep going, because there is, light on the other side.
So I want to talk about shame in my own story, and I touched on this in our earlier segment, and I didn't know my intuition was kicking in even then. We talked about the catalyzing moments in our lives that create awakening moments. So my father passed away. I was only 25. And even in that moment, it was really soon after, and I was really feeling guilt about it, and I didn't talk about it for a while. I had this profound knowing my life just got a little easier. And I say that because I didn't realize until he was removed from my life how much of my life was geared toward pleasing him. And with him out of the picture, I was really left to my own devices to design my life from that point forward without him. But in that same way, that was a different version of him still inspiring me to live my life, right? But with more empowerment than what I felt before. Yeah. So when your fiance was diagnosed, or was there any time during the process where you had those profound knowings of maybe something about yourself and why this was happening for you, or anything else that you can come up with at all? And if you can't, that's okay.
Yeah. I just was in such a different place then. I totally feel, I feel you on the father reflection, not in the relationship with my own dad, but when things are removed and it takes when we have a little space from it and we're like, oh, actually I was putting a lot of energy into that. And maybe with time you could have rectified the energy exchange and it could have been a different dynamic. And, but it was what it was. And you let yourself off the hook. And I think that's a really powerful moment when you can give yourself grace. Right. I think when I was going through all of this, I was so just laser focused on outcomes and having everything be a certain way. Like, it's my turn to get married. I will have a Lincoln Park brownstone. I will raise children in the city. And like, this is the person I'm going to do it with. Gosh darn it. And that lack of acceptance that like, this is not how this is going to go. I mean, it took me a while to get to that space of like, yes, we had a really big love, and I don't know that anybody on earth will love me the way that he did. And I'm not sure anybody is supposed to also, but, right. I couldn't sort of let those dreams go in that context, as easily. So no, I didn't see, I think the only thing I saw was I finally woke up and was like, we're actually not going to get married. Cause why would I get married? I mean, you can love somebody like wholeheartedly, but not necessarily have to go down with them. And I know that sounds like a very harsh way to put it, but I did figure it out that like, I had to put my own life mask on first. And this happened to me in a different way than it happened to him. So we were both in the same room, we got the same news, but our paths did not have to go forward together. And I was unwilling to admit that when he first got, upon diagnosis, I was like, nope, I'm in it. I committed, but, I think people who go through this when they've been married for 20 years and have 3 kids and have a lot more invested in the union, that's a different reason to stay. And for me, I could love him and leave the relationship at the same time. It was ugly and it was messy, and I handled it probably as poorly as a person could handle it. And I'm not proud of any of that. But I think what I am proud of is the fact that I didn't stay out of obligation. And I talk a lot about obligation in the book and how we make choices and how we kind of feel shackled to what we're supposed to do and the people pleasing, which keeps us like directly into complacency and far away from freedom. And I think freedom is the one thing as people that we all want. And we can disguise it as more money and more time and more vacations and more this and more that. But if you boil it down into one category, I think it's freedom. And the only way to get there is through choice. It's not just going to be bestowed upon you because you think you deserve it. I do think we all deserve it, but we have to choose to set ourselves free in the toughest moments, leaving the relationship, leaving the dog, or losing a pet, leaving the job, moving across the country. I mean, we become shackled to all these things the longer we're on earth. And the older we get, quite honestly, the harder it is to leave the things that we know because they're comfortable. Right. And it's this metaphor of, for me, it's like, well, we're wired for life because we're humans. We are born with this like innate desire to live. We are not wired for death. And any form of leaving or ending is a form of death. And we don't admit it. And so we put all these things in our life on life support. and we just like resuscitate the living daylights out of them because we're unwilling to let go. And all that does is prolong the suffering of having the thing that's supposed to go away leave. Let it go. That's why I like tell people, like, well, if you saw a dumpster fire outside with a bunch of garbage, are you going in after the hamburger wrapper? No. So why are you doing that when your life is on fire? Yeah, it's harder and it hurts. It doesn't make it any easier, but we have to make the choice to let it burn before we can enjoy the bounty on the other side.
I'm smiling through all of this because I literally just wrote a blog about making choices this morning and posted it. And the two words, the download that I got that inspired it were capitulation and indignation. And the way you're describing how we force ourselves to stay in shackles, we're either capitulating to the life we've been dealt, life happening to us, right? Or we're indignant that, well, this is the life I chose and I'm going to stick it out no matter what. And either way, we're suffering. We're not free, just how you described it. And I wanted to ask you, you said yes to the marriage. He's terminally ill. And then you chose to leave the relationship. And how much pushback did you get on that, if at all? And do you still, now that you're out there with your story, hear from people like, I can't believe that? Like, any part of that went on for you? Did you have to handle that as well?
I think I handled more internal shame than external. I don't recall. I was very self-conscious that I was going to get that external feedback, even though from a very young age, I just sort of made a commitment that as much as we say we don't care what other people think, it still hurts when they come at us.
Of course. 100%.
So, but no, my parents, I just like a moment for my parents, because even though I'm not a parent, I know that the single worst thing on earth is watching your child suffer when you can do nothing about it. I mean, they could do nothing about it. They showed up. I remember my dad calling me one day, what do you need? And I was like, honestly, now I need a car. I was like, cause I'm driving all over Kingdom Come for these appointments and I'm like Ubering and this is awful. The very next day, the man drove from Des Moines, Iowa to Chicago with a car and flew himself home. My parents showed up in incredible ways. And, I'm grateful because I know not everybody has that support and structure from their immediate parents, but you do have it from chosen family in some way, shape, or form. Right. I believe that we do, that we're surrounded by people who love us, and they got it. I mean, as much as I allowed this like big engagement party to be thrown to appease my mother and like do bridal vibe things because she was a wedding planner and all we've ever wanted to do is get me married. I mean, literally that's the end goal, and it still hasn't happened. And I'm like, the two of you need to take really good care of yourselves because I know it's coming, but I don't know when, and you're not allowed to go anywhere because I need some stability. But yeah, I mean, it was the right thing to do for a number of reasons. I mean, number one, he needed full-time care, and it was beyond what I could do to even remotely save myself, forget work. But like, it was just it was a lot. And it was, for what? The life that we were going to have together didn't exist anymore. And that was a really, really tough pill to swallow. But that's the truth you have to accept in order to like move through the decision to go.
Yeah. The word boundaries is coming up right now. And especially in the life that you're living now, out and loud and giving of yourself in the way that you are. When we practice setting boundaries, it wigs people out in our lives that aren't used to that, first of all. And then, the word self-care comes into mind. You're practicing self-care and then you have shame about it. And I wish that, and I know that you're changing that message. We are allowed to take care of ourselves. Like you said, the oxygen mask. It is not selfish. It is self-care. And if we do not take care of ourselves first, we cannot take care of anyone else. And the beauty in your story, I think of many parts of it, is that you had the wherewithal, and you don't say that you had the intuitive hits, but I'm going to correct you here to say, I felt when I was reading about your story and parts of it, that you did have the intuition to know you were going to burn up too, and to stop and say, wait a second, I don't have to go down with this. I love this man, but I love myself. And so that was huge. That was a big aha moment for me in your story. So I want to echo that to you as well. Not that you need me to do that. I keep like being your mom, not your mom.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's beautiful to hear. It also, I think when we talk about like intuition and self-care and boundaries, specifically self-care and boundaries, okay, They're very overused. And when I talk about taking care of myself, and I will toot my own horn for just a minute, my invitation to the masses is can we use those words less, and can we show in action more? Can we show up in that way, and can we live that way, versus say, I am now going to set a boundary. Nothing's going to trigger the other person you're saying that to more than It's like, okay, here we go. Like what is coming next? And like, then you begin to talk over each other. Whereas if it's just this consistent action of, no, I'm not going to go to dinner at 8:00 at night because I go to bed at 8:30, or I'm not going to do this, but could we consider doing this other thing? And just sort of gently bringing our people along on the journey. And, self-care is almost laughable at this point when you watch these reels on Instagram of the women. Some people are spoofing it, right? Where it's like, I take off my mouth tape, and then it's my collagen mask, my heatless fillers, and then it's this, and it's like, I run a marathon by 5, and it's funny.
I know. And those are versions of it for them, but in our conversation, it's just like you said, it's you don't have to speak about it, you just demonstrate it. 100%. And so we talked about intention, we talked about authenticity, and that's your authentic self coming through. And I also wanted to identify labels, because when I went through teacher training, we were asked to do a bunch of guided meditations for the rest of the group. And I remember mine very vividly. And one of them was to invite people to sit in front of a mirror and see all of the labels that they place on themselves, or society does: mother, sister, yoga teacher, type A. And in your case, it's caregiver for part of the time.
Yep.
And then when those labels are removed, whether by circumstance or self-care, we wig out. If we are not the caregiver, then who are we? So when that all was removed from you, did you have a period of time of wondering, what now? Who am I now? And then the other part of this question is really sincerely asking you, you're more than your story, right? Although you're using your story to create your brand and your vision and your momentum, and that's valuable. But I hope you do know that you are more to just even this part. And does that come up for you?
Yeah, thank you. So the labeling, totally. I mean, when the caregiver it's like, okay, the relationship's over. I hand my ring off to his mother, which was a devastating moment. All of these, it's like poof, like all these things that I had just gone from 0 to 60 into were peeled away, and I'm left with me, but I was gone, like I was a shell of a human. I was nowhere near myself, was dark. And I totally fell apart. And there were a couple months there that, were probably just like watching this high-speed train wreck of like reverting into old habits and unhealthy patterns, and just like, it was like just straight survival, coping, resistance. Like I didn't want to accept it, wanted to just like have some knight in shining armor swoop in and be like, oh, you poor thing, now I'll love you, and like just try to like make it all go away. And then after the kicking and screaming, and you call it like the squawking, after all of that nonsense was done and we get too tired, we cry ourselves to sleep, was when yoga teacher training started. So it was kind of this period, this like in between, that was really ugly for me. And I hated it. And I'm sure the people around me hated it too. It was not a happy time to be in my orbit. But then the teacher training kind of gave me the structure to like dive into something else and just put that energy, into learning a new skill and exploring this path of yoga, and why does it work? And, what does that mean for me? So yeah, I do totally feel that. And I think that the entire reason, and this is why he's the dedication in the book, was, this experience really lifted a mirror up to me and asked me, who the fuck are you? Mm-hmm. Like, that's it. Like, and what are the choice we get to make when the 2x4 moment hits? Cause it's not if, it is when. All of you listening, sorry to be the one to tell you this, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. The choice you make changes the trajectory of your life, and it redefines the legacy that you leave.
Right.
Every single time. You can choose to be a victim and fade away into the abyss. I could have done that too. Or you can choose to keep going. And the keep going part and the self-care part and the boundaries don't have to be so complicated. I mean, shoot, I live in California. We've all overcomplicated our lives out here with all the potions and the things and the rocks and the moon and it's like we could have another full-time job just like figuring out the whole, self-care part of who we are. But it's quite simple. It's eating, it's sleeping, it's limiting your
breathing. It's like,
breathing.
It's one breath at a time. There's those periods of life where it's like, okay, I'm awake, I'm breathing, let's go. And it just whittles down to the very fine nubs of what is important to navigate the rest of the path. And so, I'm really grateful that you were able to share that. And I know in your book, you go into depth of how nature has soothed you and your yoga practice has soothed you. But for the purposes of this new segment, you and several people, I hope, will inspire with your story the resilience and the wherewithal to know, again, that while you're going through it, you might not understand the why. But at some point, I hope for everybody out there that they figure out the why not. Why not you? And then the gift that you give us all is the way you share the story with us all from your authentic heart and soul as you dive into the next part of your trajectory, which I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I can say right now, I wrapped up my book tour in November and I was wiped. I lost my dog in August. It was in the middle of the book tour. I got through more events and more traveling, all of which was really, really beautiful, but it's really taxing. But I was also displaced from my home. So I never could come home here. I had water damage and I was like, oh my gosh, I just felt intuitively that this chaos loop was going to close, but I kept hearing soon. But it just didn't feel soon enough. And by November, when I resettled back here at the beach, just a few months ago, I was like, okay, I need to just live a normal life. I made a commitment to myself not to start a new business, not to write another book, not to do anything but live. I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to maintain my eating program. I'm going to get my steps in. I'm going to do Pilates like everybody else under the sun. And I'm just going to live because I had no anchor here. I had no community, and you get out what you put in. I don't know. If you've moved across the country, you get it. And I didn't do that until I was, 36, 35. So I needed to invest in my home in order to love it here, or at least explore if I want to stay, Yes. My job outside of, running the studio and doing the things that I do was really to just live. And that is what I'm doing. I'm just living, nothing new at the moment, which is tough for creators, okay, it'll come, there will be a time. And so I'm just and I call that period where you're just living, you're getting ready. You're getting ready to be ready because you don't know what's coming, good, bad, or indifferent. When the phone rings, do you want to be ready to answer the bell?
And the presence, right? It's about being in the present moment, just like our practice teaches us as well. And we can call it to be ready, of course. But, when we're just living, truly just embodying the moment, I'm just living my life today, then you are open for whatever happens because you're not holding on to yesterday.
Totally.
So, all right, I'm going to leave that there then. I'm so grateful that you came back to discuss the second half of our time together. And again, lovely, lovely, Alex, getting to meet you. And I wish you so much luck and success in everything that you do.
Thank you. I will give one more shameless plug. I put out a weekly newsletter. It's called Into the Deep with Alex. You can sign up through my Soulful Alchemist website, but I really encourage you to do that. So if you are inspired by anything I say, they're just weekly poetic wisdom drops. That's what I call them. So get it. If you respond to it, it goes directly to me, chat me up.
Awesome. That's great. That's wonderful. And I have to do a better job plugging my own website too. So head to customdesignwellness.com and check it out. So thank you for that reminder. Yeah. And we will talk soon, I hope.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.